don't need some wannabe civilian engineer telling us how to fix our runways." The colonel's voice cracked like thunder across Edwards Air Force Base, halting soldiers mid-step. Sarah Matthews didn't flinch. Her contractor badge lay shattered at her feet, but her eyes never wavered. "Sir," she said calmly, "do you remember Operation Stormlight?" The colonel froze. A hush spread across the checkpoint. "You were in Bravo unit, the one that never came back." Slowly, Sarah pulled back her sleeve. A faded tattoo, classified, known only to a handful, gleamed in the sun. Gasps. One soldier dropped his coffee. "No one outside Black Ops knows that mark," someone whispered. The colonel took a step back, his face pale. "Who the hell are you?" Sarah cracked a faint smile. "I built the runway you bombed, and I watched you leave us behind." The transformation in the crowd is instant and visceral. Colonel Hartley's face drains of color so quickly it seems his blood has simply ceased to flow. The security guards step back involuntarily, their hands falling away from Sarah as if her skin has suddenly become molten metal. The morning sun catches the partial tattoo visible through her shifted sleeve, illuminating details that make several veterans in the gathering crowd draw sharp breaths. Those numbers etched into her skin aren't random. They're coordinates every soldier who served in Kandahar during 2018 knows by heart. The location where impossible became reality, where one pilot flew through hell itself to bring others home. Imagine being thrown out of a place where you once risked everything to protect. What would you do in Sarah's shoes? Where are you watching from today? Let us know in the comments below as this incredible story unfolds. Sarah Matthews lives 15 minutes from Edwards Air Force Base, in a modest house in Lancaster that mirrors her approach to life: functional, unadorned, sufficient. Every morning begins the same way: black coffee strong enough to mask the metallic taste that never quite left after Kandahar, a weather check that her body performs automatically even before her eyes open, and the careful inspection of exit routes that has become as natural as breathing. Her 12-year-old Toyota Tacoma bears the scars of countless job sites, its bed permanently stained with concrete dust and hydraulic fluid. She chose it not for its appearance, but for its reliability. In her world, trust is earned through consistency, not promises. Her work as an independent structural engineer specializing in runway repair brings a strange comfort. There's honesty in concrete and rebar, mathematical certainty in load calculations and stress tolerances. Unlike people, materials don't lie or betray or die screaming in sandstorms. She arrives at job sites before dawn, when the world is quiet enough that she can work without the constant assessment of threats that daylight brings. Her tools rest in a military surplus bag that has traveled more miles than most soldiers, each implement cleaned and maintained with the same precision she once applied to pre-flight checks. Co-workers notice things about Sarah that she thinks she hides well: the way she positions herself in any room with clear sightlines to every exit, how her hands never stray far from something solid she could use as a weapon if needed. They see her flinch when helicopters pass overhead, watch her eyes track their flight paths with an intensity that speaks of muscle memory rather than curiosity. But they also see her work with surgical precision, creating runway surfaces that could handle anything from a Cessna to a C-17 without a single stress fracture. They wonder about her past, but learn quickly that personal questions meet with polite deflection, her life story compressed into vague mentions of previous experience and military background. The night terrors come at 3 a.m. with clockwork precision. Sarah jolts awake with sheets soaked through, her hands gripping invisible flight controls as her body fights to save people who died 7 years ago. The dream never changes: Kandahar's dust-choked air, the radio crackling with desperate voices, the weight of lives pressing down on her shoulders heavier than any G-force. "Go 7, we're taking fire!" The voice belongs to Davis, her crew chief, steady even as tracers light up the sky around their Black Hawk. In the cargo bay, Chen works to secure medical supplies, her movements efficient despite the aircraft's violent, evasive maneuvers. "We trust you, Captain," Chen's last words before the RPG hit play on repeat in Sarah's mind, a broken record of faith she couldn't justify. The impact threw both crew members from the aircraft despite their safety harnesses, the explosion tearing through the cargo bay with devastating force. Sarah's training saved her. Strapped into the reinforced pilot's seat, she rode the dying helicopter down through a controlled crash that should have been impossible in clear weather, let alone a sandstorm. But training couldn't save Davis and Chen, couldn't bring them back from where they fell, couldn't erase the image of their bodies disappearing into the swirling sand below. Physical reminders mark her body like a map of that night. The small scar on her left temple throbs when storms approach, shrapnel's calling card embedded too deep for surgeons to safely remove. Her right shoulder aches where the harness bit deep during the crash, ligaments stretched beyond their limits, but holding just long enough. In her bathroom mirror each morning she sees more than scars. She sees the weight of survival etched into every line on her face, the particular exhaustion that comes from carrying ghosts. A single photograph lives in her nightstand drawer, face down most days. 7 pilots in flight suits, faces dusty but smiling, taken 3 days before the mission that would leave only 5 of them alive. The Edwards Air Force Base contract arrived like a test from the universe. Emergency runway repairs needed, timeline aggressive, specifications exact. Sarah's bid was technically perfect, priced not to maximize profit but to guarantee acceptance. She needs this job with a desperation that has nothing to do with money and everything to do with purpose. Sitting still means drowning in memories, but returning to any military installation is like voluntarily walking into a minefield of trigger. Every jet engine's roar carries echoes of that night, every uniform a reminder of the one she folded for the last time 7 years ago. But the alternative? Letting infrastructure fail that could cost lives is worse than any personal discomfort. So she submitted the bid, won the contract, and steeled herself for whatever ghosts awaited at Edward. Day 1 on base arrives with the familiar smell of jet fuel that hits Sarah's nervous system like a physical blow. Her hands grip the steering wheel as she passes through the gate, her contractor badge feeling like a lie against her chest. The scent triggers a cascade of sensory memories. Pre-fleet checks in the dawn darkness, the weight of her flight helmet, the vibration of rotors spinning up. She forces herself to breathe normally, to focus on the present rather than the past that saturates every molecule of air on a military installation. Base personnel eye her with undisguised skepticism as she unloads her equipment. A young female contractor on a military base might as well wear a target on her back. Diversity hire, she hears one airman mutter to another as she sets up her testing equipment. Political correctness gone mad, his companion agrees, not bothering to lower his voice. Sarah's hands don't pause in their work, muscle memory guiding her through procedures she could perform blindfolded. She learned long ago that competence speaks louder than words, that precision silences critics better than argument. Her measurements are exact, her documentation flawless, her work ethic beyond reproach. But prejudice doesn't care about excellence when it has already decided what it wants to see. Colonel Richard Hartley watches from his office window as Sarah works, his jaw clenched with barely contained resentment. At 52, he has been passed over for promotion 3 times, each rejection carving deeper grooves into his bitterness. Younger officers with combat experience leap past him on the career ladder, while he remains frozen in place, a desk warrior in an era that values battlefield leadership. His uniform bears the ribbons of a career spent in air-conditioned offices and conference rooms, not the dusty FOBs and danger-closed missions that define modern military service. He sees Sarah Matthews as everything wrong with the new military, civilians doing military work, women in traditionally male spaces, merit trumping tradition. The fact that his nephew lost a runway repair contract to her bid adds personal insult to professional injury. Hartley had all but guaranteed the job to his sister's son, assured him that connections matter more than qualifications in the real world. Sarah's technically superior proposal made him a liar, her lower bid making his nepotism impossible to justify. Every day she succeeds on base is another reminder of his failure, another crack in the authority he clings to like a life raft. He begins documenting every minor infraction, real or imagined, building a case that will let him remove this irritant from his domain. Memory bleeds through Sarah's concentration as an F-22 screams overhead, its engine note too similar to ignore. Suddenly she's back in the pilot seat of her MH-60 Blackhawk, the cyclic stick vibrating in her grip as she pushes the aircraft beyond its design limits. Firebase Phoenix is under siege, 43 soldiers trapped and running out of ammunition, calling for immediate evacuation. The sandstorm has grounded every other aircraft, visibility measured in feet rather than miles. No one else will fly in this weather, the operations officer said, not an order but a statement of fact. Sarah heard it as a challenge, The first trip into Firebase Phoenix defies every regulation and safety protocol, pure skill and luck threading her helicopter through walls of sand and incoming fire. She lands by feel more than sight, trusting instruments and instinct when her eyes fail her. Soldiers pile in, wounded first, their relief palpable even through the chaos. The return flight is worse, the storm intensifying, but she makes it. On the second run, an RPG clips the tail rotor, sending vibrations through the airframe that threaten to tear the helicopter apart. Sarah compensates with every trick she knows, Davies calling out damage reports while Chen secures passengers. They make it back, offload, and against all wisdom, she volunteers for a third run. The third trip becomes legend and nightmare simultaneously. Halfway to the firebase, a direct hit to the cargo bay changes everything. The explosion tears through the Black Hawk's belly, ripping Davies and Chen from their positions despite safety harnesses rated for twice the force. Sarah fights the dying aircraft with everything she has, auto-rotation in a sandstorm being something instructors call impossible for good reason. She crashes but controls the impact, saving the remaining crew members through sheer will and skill. But Davies and Chen are gone, thrown clear in the explosion, their bodies swallowed by the storm, before she can even process their loss. She crawls from the wreckage to search for them until other survivors physically restrain her. The mission successful, but the cost unbearable. The inspection incident arrives like a perfectly orchestrated ambush. A congressional delegation visiting the base provides Hartley with his stage, important witnesses for the humiliation he plans. He times his confrontation for maximum impact, intercepting Sarah as she presents her preliminary findings to the base engineering staff. "This civilian thinks she knows better than Air Force engineers," he announces, voice pitched to carry across the hangar. "Probably got her degree from some online diploma mill, and now she wants to tell us our runway is failing?" His words drip with contempt, each syllable calculated to diminish and demean. Sarah's hands shake, but not from fear, from the effort of restraint. Every instinct screams at her to fight back, to defend herself with the fury that kept her alive through countless missions. Instead, she presents data with clinical detachment. Stress fractures in the subsurface, drainage failures that will cause catastrophic runway collapse within 6 months, load calculations that show current operations exceeding design limits. Her voice remains steady, even as Hartley's interruptions grow more aggressive, her professionalism a shield against his provocations. One congressman in the delegation watches her with unusual intensity, something in her bearing triggering recognition he can't quite place. The young female pilot who passes the inspection site wears Chen's same determined expression, that particular combination of competence and defiance that marked the best crew chief Sarah ever flew with. The resemblance is different in features, but identical in spirit, and Sarah has to turn away before the memories overwhelm her completely. She avoids the officers' club with religious dedication, knowing that every corner holds ghosts of people she failed to save. Eating alone has become her ritual, working alone her preference, suffering alone her penance. The base around her functions with the rhythm of military life, but she exists outside it, a civilian contractor by choice rather than circumstance. Hartley's trap springs with bureaucratic precision. His nephew feeds him inside information about a minor clerical error in Sarah's paperwork. A date transposed, a form number incorrect. By itself, it means nothing, but Hartley builds it into evidence of incompetence and security risk. An anonymous complaint arrives through proper channels, questioning whether a civilian should have access to critical infrastructure. He could handle the matter quietly, a simple administrative correction, but that would deny him the satisfaction of public vindication. He schedules the confrontation for 0800 hours at the main gate. Maximum foot traffic, ensuring maximum witnesses to her humiliation. The morning of reckoning dawns crisp and clear, the kind of California day that makes the desert beautiful. Sarah arrives at the main gate, responding to Hartley's summons, unaware she's walking into an execution. 0800 hours means the maximum crowd, maintenance crews heading to the flight line, pilots reporting for briefings, administrative staff beginning their day. Hartley has positioned himself strategically, his voice carrying across the checkpoint area as he reads from an official-looking document. Each word lands like a physical blow. Accusations of incompetence, security violations, and fraudulent credentials building into a crescendo of professional destruction. "You submitted false information on your security clearance forms," Hartley announces, though the error was a single transposed digit in a date field. "You've accessed restricted areas without proper authorization," he continues, though she's never stepped outside her designated work zones. The crowd grows larger, some faces sympathetic, but most simply curious about the drama unfolding. Hartley produces her contractor badge with theatrical flourish, scissors appearing from his pocket. The cutting is deliberate, slow, each snip through the plastic another nail in the coffin of her work at Edwards. Sarah stands silent throughout, her military bearing unconscious but unmistakable to those who know what to look for. What would you do if someone who saved your life was standing right in front of you? Share your thoughts below. Lieutenant Colonel Walker rounds the corner just as Hartley drops the destroyed badge pieces at Sarah's feet. Something in her posture triggers recognition. The way she stands at parade rest without thinking, the 1,000-yard stare that sees beyond immediate humiliation to something darker. As she adjusts her sleeve, a nervous gesture, or perhaps resignation to her fate, the fabric shifts enough to reveal the tattoo on her shoulder. Walker's coffee cup falls from nerveless fingers, the crash of ceramic on concrete creating a moment of startled silence. His voice cuts through the morning air with the sharp clarity of recognition and reverence. Ghost 7 saved 43 of us that night, Walker says, his words carrying the weight of memory that transforms atmosphere instantly. The crowd's energy shifts like a physical thing, curiosity becoming electric attention. Master Sergeant Reynolds pushes through the gathered personnel, his eyes fixed on Sarah with laser intensity. "You flew through that storm when nobody else would," he says, voice thick with emotion. "You came back for us." Captain Rodriguez, who works directly under Hartley, shifts uncomfortably, loyalty to her commander warring with growing recognition of the truth unfolding before them. Tech Sergeant Kim voices the skepticism some feel, unwilling to believe that this quiet civilian contractor could be the legendary pilot from Kandahar. "Could be anyone's tattoo," he says, though doubt creeps into his tone. Young Airman Jackson, barely old enough to have served during the incident, pulls out his phone with the reflexive speed of his generation. His fingers fly across the screen, search results appearing within seconds. "Holy shit," he breathes, then louder. "Holy shit, it's true! Ghost 7, Captain Sarah Matthews, MH-60 pilot. 3 runs into Firebase Phoenix during the worst sandstorm in decade. Distinguished Flying Cross with Valor, Silver Star, Purple Heart." The recitation of medals hits the crowd like physical blows. Senior Master Sergeant Thompson, bitter from his own experiences with the system, challenges, "Where's she been for 7 years then? Heroes don't just disappear." Lieutenant Peterson, young and idealistic about military protocol, defends Hartley even as doubt creeps into his voice. "We have procedures for a reason. Security is paramount." But the tide has turned, phones emerging throughout the crowd as veterans share combat footage, stories spreading like wildfire. The legend of Ghost 7 is well known among those who served in Afghanistan, the pilot who did the impossible and then vanished like smoke. Hartley's face cycles through colors as his authority evaporates like morning dew under harsh sun. "Stolen valor!" he shouts, desperation cracking his commanding voice. "This woman is a fraud. Anyone can get a tattoo, fake some records." But the crowd has momentum now, veterans stepping forward with personal testimonies. A staff sergeant describes watching the Black Hawk disappear into the sandstorm on its 3rd run, convinced he'd never see it again. A technical sergeant recalls helping pull survivors from the wreckage, the pilot crawling back toward the storm, screaming 2 names, over and over. Each story adds weight to the truth Hartley desperately tries to deny. Young airmen fumble with phones, social media lighting up with live streams and posts. Ghost 7 trends within minutes, the story spreading beyond Edwards to the wider military community. Comments flood in from around the world, soldiers who were at Firebase Phoenix, medical personnel who treated the wounded, commanders who tried to convince Captain Matthews to accept her medals. The digital age turns Hartley's public execution into Sarah's vindication, though she seems to shrink from the attention rather than embrace it. The pressure of memory and recognition finally breaks through Sarah's carefully maintained composure. Her voice, silent throughout Hartley's tirade, cracks like ice in spring. "Davis and Chen died that night," she says, words falling into sudden silence as the crowd strains to hear. "They died because I made the choice to go back a 3rd time. Everyone calls me a hero, but heroes bring everyone home." Tears she's held for 7 years finally fall, each one a testament to grief that time hasn't dimmed. "I just came here to fix your runway. Same thing I've been doing for 7 years, fixing things, because I couldn't fix that." The crowd's energy shifts again, from vindication to something deeper. This isn't the triumphant hero they expected, but a broken warrior still fighting battles they can't see. Sarah's confession transforms their understanding. She's not hiding from glory, but from ghosts, not rejecting recognition, but carrying guilt that no metal can ease. Davis had 2 kids, she continues, voice barely above a whisper. Chen was getting married in the spring. Their families got folded flags while everyone thanked me for my service. How do you accept medals when the real heroes are in boxes? The raw honesty cuts through military bearing and protocol, leaving humans facing human pain. Some in the crowd look away, uncomfortable with grief this naked. Others step closer, forming an unconscious protective circle around someone they now understand needs shielding, not from physical threats, but from the weight of survival. Hartley stands isolated, his moment of triumph transformed into spectacular self-destruction. His carefully orchestrated humiliation has become his own downfall, witnessed by hundreds and broadcast to thousands more. The crowd pressure builds like atmospheric weight before a storm. Veterans form ranks around Sarah, not in formal military precision, but in the instinctive movement of warriors protecting wounded comrades. Airman Chen, no relation to the fallen crew chief but carrying the name like an honor, streams everything on TikTok, her commentary shifting from excitement about drama at the gate to subdued respect for unfolding tragedy. Captain Rodriguez makes her choice, stepping away from Hartley despite knowing it might end her career under his command. The base splits into factions, those calling for immediate justice, those insisting on proper procedures, and those simply bearing witness to a moment that will define Edwards Air Force Base for years to come. Security Forces Sergeant Baker looks at his partner with an expression that says everything about moral conflict in uniform. "I didn't sign up to throw out heroes," he states flatly, his hand moving away from Sarah's arm. His partner, younger and more rigid about regulations, argues, "Orders are orders. We can't just ignore protocol because of who someone used to be." The philosophical divide plays out in real time as more security personnel arrive, some moving to follow Hartley's commands while others hesitate, phones in hand, showing them the spreading story of Ghost 7. The very fabric of military discipline strains against human decency. Hartley's staff begins distancing themselves with the subtle but unmistakable movements of self-preservation. His deputy, who minutes ago stood firmly beside him, now edges toward the crowd. Only a few loyalists remain, those whose careers are too entangled with his to escape the gravitational pull of his collapse. Phone calls flood the base commander's office from every direction, veterans demanding justice, officers concerned about breakdowns in discipline, congressional staffers alerted by social media to an unfolding crisis. The pressure builds from below and above simultaneously, an unusual reversal of military hierarchy where enlisted personnel and junior officers drive events rather than follow them. General Morrison appears not because protocol demands it, but because the crowd's energy threatens to transform from protest to something more volatile. Even then, his arrival feels forced by circumstance rather than leadership, reactive rather than decisive. Master Sergeant Chin, this one a combat veteran with her own Afghanistan stories, voices what many feel. Now they care? Where was this concern when she was fixing their runways in silence? The bitterness in her tone reflects a deeper institutional failure. The military's struggle to support warriors after they hang up their uniforms. Morrison's presence represents authority, but the moral authority has already shifted to the crowd, to the veterans, who understand Sarah's burden in ways rank can't capture. Memory intrudes again as Sarah watches the crowd dynamics, her therapist's words from 2019 echoing across the years. "Maybe fixing things is your way forward," the professional had suggested after another session of Sarah reliving that night. "You couldn't fix what happened to Davis and Chen, but you can prevent future infrastructure failures. You can save lives by ensuring runways don't collapse, bridges don't fail, structures don't kill." It had seemed like cold comfort then, trading direct action for indirect prevention. But over 7 years, she'd found a different kind of purpose in concrete and steel, in mathematics that didn't lie, and materials that behaved predictably. General Morrison offers what he thinks Sarah wants: full reinstatement, restored rank, public honors, and a ceremony to properly recognize her service. The crowd expects acceptance, a Hollywood moment of vindication and triumph. Instead, Sarah's response cuts through expectations with surgical precision. "I don't want your medals," she says quietly but firmly. "Just let me finish the runway. That's all I came here to do." The simplicity of her request confounds those expecting drama, demanding recognition or seeking revenge against Hartley. She wants neither vindication nor vengeance, just the ability to complete work that might save lives. The quiet dignity of her refusal shifts the crowd's energy again. This isn't about protocol or procedures, ranks or recognition. It's about a warrior who found her own way to continue serving without uniforms or salutes. The veterans understand, first, nodding with the recognition of those who've walked similar paths. Fixing things becomes a metaphor they grasp intuitively, the desperate need to build something positive from destruction, to create order from chaos, to save lives in whatever small ways remain possible when the big saves are behind you. Hartley's end comes not through official censure, but through the devastating withdrawal of respect. Within days, he requests transfer himself, unable to function in an environment where every subordinate looks at him with barely concealed contempt. His morning walks through the base become gauntlets of turned backs and cold shoulders. The enlisted personnel follow his orders with technical correctness but zero enthusiasm. Their compliance so exact it becomes its own form of rebellion. His nephew's company finds itself blacklisted, not through any official action, but through the informal network that actually controls military contracting. The conversations over beer, the quiet words at conferences, the reputation that spreads faster than any documentation. Power evaporates when people stop believing in it, and Hartley discovers that authority without respect is just noise. His transfer request gets approved with unusual speed, his replacement arriving with pointed emphasis on supporting civilian contractors and ensuring proper treatment of all personnel. The investigation into his conduct becomes unnecessary. He's already destroyed himself more thoroughly than any official action could accomplish. His career doesn't end with court-martial or demotion, but with the slower death of irrelevance, posted to positions where he can do no harm because no one will follow where he leads. 6 months later, dawn breaks over Edwards Air Force Base, with F-22 Raptors lined up on Sarah's completed runway. The surface gleams in the early light. Every specification exceeded, every potential failure point reinforced beyond requirements. She still drives the same battered Tacoma, still arrives before sunrise, still works with the focused intensity of someone for whom precision is prayer. But something fundamental has changed at Edwards, a shift in culture that can't be measured in regulations or documented in procedures. Respect has been earned through competence, rather than commanded through rank. The change manifests in small but significant ways. Female contractors no longer face the automatic skepticism that greeted Sarah's arrival. Their qualifications get evaluated on merit rather than assumptions. Their presence normalized through the memory of Ghost 7's quiet excellence. Young pilots learn the story not from official briefings but from hangar talk, the informal education that shapes military culture more than any manual. Ghost 7's standard becomes shorthand for competence over credentials, for judging people by their work rather than their appearance, for understanding that heroes don't always wear uniforms. On her final day at Edwards, Sarah performs one last inspection as dawn paints the desert in shades of gold and crimson. A young female pilot approaches nervously, her flight suit crisp with newness, her wings still shiny with recent earning. "Ma'am, because of you, she begins, but Sarah cuts her off with a gentle gesture. "Because of you," Sarah corrects, "not me. You earned those wings. You'll save lives. Davis and Chen would want you focused on flying forward, not looking back." Pilot nods, understanding, passing between them that needs no words. The torch carried forward by new hands, the mission continuing through fresh dedication. The foundation Sarah created in secret finally comes to light through investigation by a persistent journalist. The Davis-Chen workshop operates from an unassuming building in Lancaster, funded entirely by Sarah's contract earnings beyond her modest living expenses. It's not about scholarships or ceremonies, but practical skills. Veterans teaching veterans to rebuild, whether that means concrete structures or personal foundations. The workshop embodies Sarah's philosophy of healing through useful action, creating something positive from destruction. No plaques mark the entrance, no publicity seeks donations, just quiet work, continuing day after day. Lives rebuilt, one skill at a time. Do you know someone who serves quietly, without recognition? Honor them in the comments. The final flashback comes unbidden as Sarah loads her truck for the last time. Davis and Chen sit in the crew compartment during a quiet moment between missions, their faces relaxed, in the way warriors achieve when danger is temporarily distant. "If something happens," Davis says with the matter-of-fact tone of someone who's calculated odds, "tell our story. Make it mean something." Chen nods agreement, adding, "Not the glory bullshit, but the real stuff. the work that matters. They weren't asking for monuments or medals, but for their service to continue rippling forward, touching lives they'd never meet, preventing deaths they'd never know about. Sarah realizes she's finally kept that promise, not through public recognition or forced remembrance, but through quiet service that honors their memory better than any ceremony. Every runway that doesn't fail, every structural collapse prevented, every life saved through infrastructure that holds, these are the real monuments to Davis and Chen. Their sacrifice continues through her work, transformed from acute trauma into sustained purpose. The guilt hasn't disappeared, may never fully fade, but it's been alchemized into something useful, something that builds rather than destroys. Loading the last of her equipment, Sarah notices the maintenance crews lining her exit route. They don't salute. She's a civilian and always insisted on that distinction. Instead, they offer something more meaningful. Silent nods of recognition from professionals to professional, respect earned rather than required. No speeches mark her departure, no ceremonies delay her exit. Just the quiet acknowledgement of work well done, lives potentially saved, service continued in different form. The morning shift watches her truck roll toward the gate, understanding that heroism takes many forms, and not all of them involve medals. As her Tacoma passes through the checkpoint for the last time, radio chatter crackles across the base frequencies. Ghost 7's runway is fully operational, the tower announces, using her call sign naturally without drama. A new pilot, fresh from training, queries, "Who's Ghost 7?" The veteran pilot beside him considers the question before responding with simple truth. Someone who fixed what was broken. The answer encompasses more than runways, speaking to the deeper repairs possible when warriors find new ways to serve, when guilt transforms into purpose, when the fallen are honored through the living's continued dedication. Sarah's truck disappears into the desert sunrise, taillights fading into the golden distance. Her reflection in the rearview mirror shows something that's been absent for 7 years. Not happiness exactly, but peace. The ghosts remain, will always remain, but they're quieter now, appeased by service that continues their mission in different form. Behind her, Edwards Air Force Base continues its operations on infrastructure built to last, maintained by someone who understood that the smallest details can mean the difference between life and death. Ahead lies the next job, the next runway, the next chance to fix something broken in a world that breaks things and people with equal indifference. The desert swallows her truck like an ocean accepting a ship, vast and impartial. But the ripples of her presence continue spreading. In the female contractors who face less resistance. In the veterans who understand that service takes many forms. In the runways that won't fail when they're needed most. Sarah Matthews disappeared once before, vanishing from military life into civilian obscurity. This time, she leaves behind something more permanent than medals or recognition. A changed culture, a standard of excellence, and the quiet understanding that fixing broken things is its own form of heroism. The sunrise burns away the last shadows of night, and somewhere, Davis and Chin rest a little easier.